What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some things that quarterbacks need to hear to increase their throw power, their throw distance, and their overall arm strength. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it can teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a QB and you guys would like to get some work in with us this offseason, I'm going to be traveling out to 14 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to Orlando, then Phoenix, Arizona. That is a new addition. Then Charlotte, Dallas, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys want some more information, how you guys can sign up, check out that very first link in that description below, fellas. Let's get started with this video. So now we're going to be looking at a clip here from Will Levis. He's a quarterback from Kentucky. Kid has a crazy arm. That ball shoots off of his hand. And it's honestly not, he doesn't do anything special that like, a guy like Patrick Mahomes, he has a real long motion. Josh Allen, big, huge guy. I think Levis is a big dude, but his motion is so mechanically sound. He's able to generate so much of what we call torque. And torque is the secret to being able to get a strong arm. So torque comes from being able to separate your lower half from your upper half. They call it dissociation. So let's watch Levis throw this thing full speed real quick, and then we'll break it down. So very twitchy motion, like very, very smooth, very twitchy. You could tell he's rotating at his hips, and he's generating a lot of force. So how does he exactly do that? So like I said, it's all about torque. It's all about being able to separate your lower from your upper. When your hips are driving towards the target, you want to be able to have your shoulders slightly closed and your shoulders back. Hips going forward, shoulders going back. That's that dissociation. But how do you do that efficiently? So number one, it starts with your base. Quarterbacks are built from the ground up. And after we show this example, we're going to be showing some bad examples of quarterback mechanics and some of the common bad habits that a lot of young quarterbacks have that lead to decreased throw power. But first, I want to break this down to give us a foundation. So QBs are built from the ground up. Number one, you need to have a correct base. So by base, I'm not saying that your feet need to be super narrow. I definitely don't want your feet to be super wide. Where we need your base to be is you need your back foot to be located underneath your back shoulder. You need to be able to keep your weight back, and you want to have your back shin completely straight. Or the way I say it, you don't want your knee to be caved inward. You want to be in this position right here, because when you're in a base like this, your back leg is straight, your knee is straight. That allows you to keep your upper body back. So when you could have this slight load on your backside, that allows you to be in a strong position to transfer your weight forward and generate torque. So when you have your weight back like this, this can get your hips to rotate. So you see when he gets his front foot down, you see how he's starting to shoot through. He's shifting weight from his back quad to his front quad, because that is what will activate his hips and get that front hip to be able to rotate through and get him to this position. This is where the power comes from his lower half. A shift of weight from his legs and a rotation from his hips. Now, the reason why I talk about your back leg being in a good pre-throw position is sometimes a lot of guys won't have their weight back like this. They won't have 60 to 70% of their weight back. What they'll have is 60% on their front foot. And when 60% is on the front side of your motion, that doesn't allow your hips to rotate through. Essentially, you've already transferred weight. When you have all of your weight on the front foot and you've already transferred weight, that doesn't allow your hips to go. Your leg's going to extend behind you and your hips are going to lock out. You're going to be throwing all upper half. And in this next example of a younger quarterback, that's exactly what he does. So you want to make sure that your weight is back so we can actually drive. That transfer of weight from your back quad to your front quad, as you see Levis do right here, that's where the hip rotation comes from. Now, if your back foot is too wide, so let's say his back foot was way outside of his frame, and he goes to transfer his weight from his back quad, that foot is going to extend way behind his frame, and his hips won't be able to rotate. That front hip will kind of like hinge almost, and he'll be throwing all upper half. And we're going to show that with an example of Justin Fields also. So fellas, number one, need to make sure we get to a good pre-throws position to be able to generate power. Now, like I said, power comes from something called torque, right? Torque is one of those things, like we said, separating upper and lower. So your pre-throw position, your back foot being underneath your back shoulder, allows you to generate torque because that allows you to close your front shoulder. So you could try this right now. A lot of young guys, when I have them do this, this really is kind of like the eye-opening thing for them. You stand, like let's say you're a righty. Stand on your throwing side foot only. Don't put your left foot in the ground. Balance on one foot. Now, what I want you to try to do is rotate with your front shoulder and try to turn it, like let's say you're facing forward, try to turn it facing the target. So when you rotate with your front shoulder, it's very easy. Now I want you to stand on your left foot and try to rotate your front shoulder. and you're going to see the difference. It's going to feel like it's almost like closed, like your front shoulder is incapable of rotating. And that's the problem with a lot of those front side heavy quarterbacks. They're not able to get to this position because they don't have their weight back. When you get your weight to this position where you got about 60 to 70% back, that makes it easy to close your shoulders. So now, why is that important? Because when you have that front shoulder closed and your foot strike lands, the hips are going through, but the shoulders are staying closed. So that's how you generate power. It's a lot like hitting a baseball, fellas. A lot of people equate, oh, well, he's a baseball player. He could throw the ball well. It's more like hitting a baseball than throwing a baseball. Because when you hit a baseball, what do? You have the bat here. You take a step with your front stride. The bat stays back. You stay loaded. You stay closed with your front shoulder. And the pivot of the back toe, the hip rotation, brings the bat through. Same idea when we were throwing. That front foot needs to get down, that front side needs to close, and the hip rotation brings the ball through. When that ball is trailing your back hip and your front hip has already came open, that's where power comes from, fellas. That is how we get juice on the ball, distance on the ball, and more power on the ball. So I wanted to make sure we broke that down just so you guys have a good knowledge of the mechanical motion. This is about as good as it gets. I'm going to be dead honest with you. He's got probably one of the best motions I've ever seen. It's very twitchy. He's got a lot of whip to it. He's got a lot of power to it. So let's look at a bad example of a quarterback here. So this is obviously like kind of a dud pass. I can't stand this camp, number 1, 2, because there's no coaching. There's no correction of this kind of stuff. It's just, let's just run these guys through the drills as fast as possible. So I don't blame this quarterback as much as I don't blame the coaches because they know this stuff. They're just too lazy to actually correct it and tell him what he's doing wrong. So when this quarterback goes back into his drop, he's taking a 3-step drop and a hitch. Completely normal position, right? Got weight on the front foot, not enough weight on the back leg. So when he hitches up, essentially he should be shifting that back foot weight or shifting that front foot weight to his back foot. But when he hitches up, you see how he leaves that weight on the front side. This looks like the exact opposite of Levitt's base. So you see, weight on the front side, probably about 70% front side, not enough weight on the back leg, his back leg is extended. So knowing what we know about throwing mechanics, in the last example, we talked about hip rotation. But when you have all your weight to the front side, can you transfer any weight from your back leg? No. And when you don't have any weight on your front side and you have or don't have any weight on your back side and you have all your weight on your front side, can you rotate your front shoulder? No. So what's going to end up happening is he's going to open up his shoulder, and he's not going to have any hip rotation. So you see how his elbow and the ball come through before his back hip and his back foot do. That is what puts pressure on the elbow, let's put pressure on the shoulder, and will limit your arm strength. That will decrease your deep ball. That will decrease the velocity you have on it. And you see the result of the throw. The ball dies, it doesn't have much pop to it, and it's finishing low because there's nothing involved with his lower half. So what I would tell this quarterback to correct is try to get to that same base that we saw the last quarterback get to. When he hitches up, he should be shifting his weight. He's got 70% on his front foot. He should be shifting and getting 70% onto his back foot and staying back with his upper half because that will allow him to close that front shoulder. That will allow him to transfer his weight. But when all of his weight is forward like this, he's got nothing. His weight is essentially already transferred. He can't slightly rotate his front side, so his chest spreads open to 90. But when you spread open and you have all your weight already transferred, there is zero torque. There is no torque involved on this throw at all. And this is a simple fix. He just needs to get to the opposite position when he throws. He just needs to get all of this weight to his backside. But the coaches are so concerned with the extravaganza that they're putting on that they're not going to actually correct him. And that's the problem. That's the problem with a lot of these camps out there, that they don't correct people. They don't actually teach. It's just a money grab. They just want your money. They just want you to show up so that you can pay however much it is. And that's that. They're not going to actually correct you, and they're not going to actually help you get better. That's not what we do. That's not what a good quarterback coach or anybody who actually cares about their players getting better will do. You have to correct these habits, fellas, because if you constantly rep out these bad habits and you're not getting corrected, you're not getting coached, you will not make any strides and you will not get better. The ball will lack velocity and you won't know why. And then somebody will be like, oh, well, just flick your wrist harder, or oh, just push off your back leg harder, when that isn't even the source of the actual problem. So fellas, we can't make these bad habits. This is what decreases quarterback's arm strength in so many different cases. We need to get my weight back. I need to be able to generate power from my hips. I need to get to that dissociation position. So now let's look at Justin Fields. Now, this is one of the common common mistakes that guys will make in terms of arm strength. And again, he throws a bomb right here. This ball has a ton of pop to it, a ton of distance, but this was mainly an upper body throw. Now, the reason why I show you this, the reason why I'm going to show this clip, and again, I'm going to be like, this is a 60-yard, 65, 70-yard bomb. It's probably when you throw this, you're putting everything you have into it. So I'm not saying that this is bad form. Justin Fields, I actually really like his form. I'm just saying that a lot of quarterbacks will do this type of stuff on shorter throws. Like they will do this type of bad habit that Fields has right here, and we're going to get into it in a second, on a 10-yard dig, on a bang 8, on a 10-yard out, because they're trying to generate so much power. And I'm just trying to show you this to show you what happens to your body when you make this type of throw and why this is not the safest way to even throw. So when he gets set up to throw, let's talk about that pre-throw position. He hitches up. Look at where he's at. Back foot under his frame. Weight is back. So what is that going to allow him to do? That's going to allow his hips to rotate. That's going to allow his front side to close. And you see that's what he does. He's able to slightly rotate with the front side. His weight is back, but he makes an easy mistake. And this is something that he struggled with, I think, and I think he's corrected it, to be 100% honest with you, because again, when guys always go to the league, they always get so much better because they realize how much faster everything is and how much faster they have to move. But he, instead of shifting weight, you remember I talked about how shifting weight off of your back quad will get your hips to go through. But also when you shift weight, that gets your front stride down. So a lot of people degenerate power, and they've been taught this before, even at a young age. Oh, you got to push off of your back foot. We don't want to push off my back foot, because when we push off my back foot and I'm in that correct base, back foot under the shoulder, weight is back, and you push off of that foot, that creates a very long stride. And you see how his leg extends out. So what that does is that prevents hip rotation. When your leg extends like this, and you see how the leg kind of kicks behind him this way and his knee goes outward, that's a common habit that a lot of guys have. They have an overstride because they're in a good base, but they push off of the foot, and that lengthens the front stride so their hips don't rotate. So the only source of power that they have is dipping their shoulders, elbow, and head out of the throw. And you see that's what Fields kind of does. He kind of leans slightly. He pulls that front elbow down. And when you pull that front elbow down, don't get me wrong, that's a source of power for sure. But it's not consistent power because your release point exits your frame. Your release point gets outside of your frame, which makes you come across. And he will probably, as you can see on the finish, over-rotate. You see how his front foot is pointed over here, hips and shoulders are pointed over here. Now listen, I've made this same mistake a million times when throwing deep because you're trying to get everything into it. When you're trying to throw as far as you can, I get it. I understand. I am just saying to not make this same mistake on shorter throws. If you're a guy who struggles to rip a 12-yard dig, well, a 12-yard dig, you're not trying to throw it as hard as you can, but like let's say a bang 8, like a hard post, and you're struggling to get the ball there, it's dying, maybe check yourself. See if you're pushing off of this long foot, see if you're pushing off this back foot. All of these things, fellas, can tie into a lack of power. Now, again, this is also a problem because it's not safe. When you don't have that hip rotation, what are you throwing with? Upper body, right? So that's what puts a lot of pressure on the elbow and the shoulder. You see how his elbow and shoulder are leading his back hip. His foot is kicking behind him. He's not throwing this with his lower half at all. Now, again, like I said, it's a deeper throw, fellas. I get it. But on shorter throws, this puts a ton of pressure, shoulder, elbow, and it's not sustainable. It's got power because he's swinging his elbow. Nobody disagrees with any old school quarterback coach that says pulling the elbow is going to give you power. But it's not efficient because your release point exits your frame, and that's not the best source of power for your arm because your shoulders are going to be leading your hips, and we don't want that. That puts a ton of pressure on the elbow and shoulder. We want to throw with my lower half. So what I would advise him to do if I was coaching him on this, I would say think more of a shift with your back leg to get the front foot down so your hips can clear because he's got such a great pre-throw position. Okay, fellas? So there's little bad habits in everybody's motion. Even the top guys in the world, top 32 best sometimes have issues with their mechanics. And again, we're always looking for that 1% on how we can be more efficient. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. Always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, we are traveling out to 14 more states this offseason, 2-day long QB and wide receiver camp. So if you guys want some more information on that, check out that very first link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.